For exactly 10 years, the Ballon d'Or trophy was essentially traded between Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi. The one player who won it before those two guys, back in 2007, former Milan man Ricky Kaká. And the player who ended that 10-year Ronaldo-Messi Ballon d'Or run now becomes a Milan player in Luka Modric. You know, when Paolo Maldini signed Zlatan Ibrahimovic back in 2019, it obviously wasn't just for football reasons. It was about the leadership, the experience, the know-how about how to win football games. And now, the signing of Luka Modric is not much different from that. This decision is essentially taking a page out of Maldini's playbook, bringing an experienced player to get the best out of a young Milan. But how exactly is this experienced piece gonna fit into this Milan squad and more so Allegri's system? That's what we're going to talk about in today's video. So if you're more used to listening to the audio version of this video, today you want to see the visuals as well, because we're going to look at a few different formations, look at the lineups, and see how Modric would exactly fit in. So at 39 years of age, it's obvious his physicality has diminished dramatically, but the player still has that vision. He still has the technical ability to be able to execute some of the things that he can, kind of foresee in the game. In his final season with Real Madrid, he played more matches than he did in any other season with the club. He played in 35 of 38 league games, provided he only started about 17 of those, but he did average about 50 minutes per match played. He scored a couple of goals, had 6-7 assists to go along with it. So even last season, his passing vision, his game control, those assets were still pretty much there with Modric. And naturally, at his age, the speed, the physicality have obviously dropped off. But to understand the player a little bit more, maybe we'll, create a few categories about where to look at Modric from. There's obviously the playmaking and the vision. Modric's ability to dictate tempo with precise, short, and long passes. I think he has a career percentage of about 85 to 90% in passing accuracy. This has made him one of those ideal players to control possession, to break through lines. It doesn't have to be, just because he's older, it doesn't have to be breaking through lines with his pace and moving forward. It can just be from his unique ability to be able to pass the ball. Then there's his versatility. Now, Modric during his career has played as a deep lying playmaker, central midfielder. He's even played more of an advanced role like a number 10. There have been certain managers that even played him on the flanks. Now, at 40 years old in Allegri's system, we'll go through the formations and see where he'll actually probably fit in them. But, at this point in time, we're not going to be seeing him as much on the flanks. You're not going to be seeing him as much maybe playing up forward as a number 10. You're probably going to be seeing him a little bit further back, sort of orchestrating and dictating play and having maybe a defensive figure alongside him that can, hold up those defensive responsibilities in the midfield. But that doesn't eliminate the fact that he's a versatile player, and that versatility doesn't just have to come through his own gameplay. That versatility is something that he can teach the other guys. He can talk to a player who's playing more advanced as a number 10 and tell him what he would do if he was a number 10. He can look at the other central midfielders and tell them what they would do. He can look at the players on the flanks and teach them what he has learned. Then you look at his composure under pressure, his technical ability to evade tackles and, maintain possession in tight spaces is elite. Obviously, he's a Ballon d'Or winner, but it's still pretty good even at the age of 40. Now, could that change in Serie A, which could at times be a heavily defensive league? Yes, maybe yes, that will be something that will be more challenged. Then you look at the basic idea of leadership, the reason why Ibrahimovic was brought on board. Same thing as Modric. He's the captain of the Croatian team. He hasn't retired from the Croatian team still. He wants to have a good season, so he gets picked. Naturally he gets picked, but he still wants to have a good season so he can have a good time during the FIFA World Cup in 2026 as well. So this is not some retirement party that the guy is coming for. He's actually coming here to accomplish goals. He's coming here so he can actually maintain the momentum that puts him in a good place for the next World Cup. And then he's also, one of Real Madrid's most decorated players. He's won 28 titles with them. At the end of the day, he brings a winning mentality and he can mentor a lot of the players on this team. Now, naturally, some of the limitations that we're going to see with Luka, it starts off naturally with his age and the amount of time that he's probably going to be able to play. You're probably looking at about 45 minutes, somewhere between 45 minutes to 60 minutes on and off that the guy will be able to provide. We're obviously not taking into account potential injuries. At that age, at 39, he's going to be 40 in September. So at that age, frailties start to come about. Just because he played 50 plus games last season doesn't mean he can necessarily do it this season. So there's obviously the limitation of a risk of injury and how his recovery would be at this age. And the second limitation naturally is the amount of minutes he can play. Unlikely he's going to be able to provide anything more than 45 to 60 minutes. The benefit that Milan has with that is that they're playing one game a week. There's no Champions League, no European football. There's just Coppa Italia. And for that reason, the player would actually be able to get a significant amount of rest in between games. So there are strengths that he brings on board, but also naturally there are weaknesses involved here too. Now, when it comes to Allegri, we've had a few conversations about how he's going to be coaching. I'll probably be putting out a video about, the coach's different ideas that he's going to probably be implementing as well. But he is considered, as we've heard about in a lot of different podcasts and spaces, is that, he's a pragmatic coach. He's not necessarily bound by this one style of play. I do still think that he's a coach that no matter what will always favor defense first. Even in his press conference, he talked about that, in the last few years or multiple years, a couple of decades almost, the team that has won the Serie A title has been the one that has been the most defensively sound, minus the Maurizio Sarri Juventus side. And he pushes for that idea. He says that because he believes in that first you got to handle defense and then you figure out your attacking systems. So with Milan for next season, it is being predicted at this point in time that he'll probably be playing the 4-2-3-1 formation. He might even be playing the 4-3-3 formation. There would be certain games potentially where he could play the 4-3-1-2 formation as well, trying to utilize both the attacking trident of Leao, Santiago Jimenez, and Christian Pulisic. But where exactly would Modric lie in a 4-2-3-1 formation? Let's take a look at that. I think in this type of a formation, it's pretty obvious. He's going to be playing back there. He's going to be playing in a double pivot, essentially, with a defense-minded midfielder. Granit Xhaka's links are, pretty much out now, so it seems like it might be somebody like Yusuf Fofana, who partners up alongside Modric to be able to handle those defensive responsibilities. Maybe even somebody like Samuele Ricci, you could say, who is a more defense-first midfielder. His role there would be to receive the ball from the back line and then, dictate tempo, distribute to the wingers, utilize Pulisic, Leao, and create attacking opportunities essentially from there. His ability to switch plays with long balls, crossing the ball out to Rafael Leao. He's known very well for his ability to be able to pass the ball, cross the ball with the outside of his foot. That could bring in somebody like Christian Pulisic in there too. So in this type of a formation, the key partnerships would be that of Modric alongside Yusuf Fofana at this point in time from a defensive standpoint, where Fofana's athleticism would cover, Modric's defensive weaknesses at this age, but allow him to still focus on the creativity that would be required. The other key partnership in a formation like this would be that of Pulisic and Leao. Modric's ability to, deliver pinpoint passes to these guys could put them into very good attacking situations, possibly generating a lot of 1v1 kind of opportunities. So, if you take a couple of example scenarios, like you take a team like Atalanta, that is a high pressing side. In that type of situation, you'd probably expect Modric to sort of sit back, sit deep. He'd use his, composure and calmness to sort of get away from pressure and evade pressure essentially and, create counters through Leao and Christian. While against a low block side, a side like, let's say, Cremonese, he would be playing more of potentially an advanced role. If that team is going to be sitting back, he might be able to push forward a little bit more. And if he sits back against a low block side, his, long range passing would actually be pretty beneficial. Any of his assets and skills that would allow Milan to unlock the defense, that would be utilized. Then there's a formation of a 4-3-3. I think in a 4-3-3, you could potentially, depending on the opponent, expect Modric to play either as a right-sided or left-sided midfielder, play at the mezzala with Ricci and Fofana. So you have two solid defensive midfield profiles as well, and the creative aspect of the game would be handled a little bit more by Modric. Or he could even play in a 4-3-3 as a sole deep-lying midfielder and with two energetic runners right next to him. Somebody maybe, let's say, like Arden Yashari and Ruben Loftus-Cheek alongside. Massimo Ambrosini talked about this. He suggested that Modric could play as a regista in front of the defense at San Siro, controlling play, or even play as a mezzala in a more attacking role under Max Allegri. So as a mezzala, tactically, he could, drift into pockets, link up with the wingers, potentially make some late runs into the box. He's wearing the Tijani Rangers number 14. Now, that's pretty much what Rangers used to do. He used to link up with the wingers, he used to drift into open pockets and then make those late runs and get those so many tap-in goals that he scored. Whereas if he's playing as a regista, he would be that anchor in the midfield. He'll set the tempo, he'll recycle possession with the other players while players like Fofana and Ricci handle the more defensive responsibilities. Here, if we look at the key partnerships, one would be with Samuele Ricci. He's a pretty technically gifted midfielder. He could complement Luka Modric by sharing some of those, playmaking responsibilities, or he could also drop back deep and allow Modric to go a little bit more advanced because he himself has that defensive capability. And Ricci himself has even talked about how, he hopes to learn from Luka Modric. He hopes for a more, mentorship sort of dynamic with him. And the second key partnership in this is going to be if he's going to be sitting back and connecting the defensive line with the attacking phase of the game. A key partnership in that sense then becomes with the center backs themselves. With example scenarios, for example, in a Milan derby, Modric as a mezzala could exploit Inter's aggressive pressing. He could find, as I've already said a few times, in this formation, Pulisic or Leao with quick passes. While against a compact side like Bologna, he would sit deeper, use long diagonals, switch plays. Quite honestly, for me, I would say 4-3-3 at this point in time seems like the formation that might be the most used with Modric playing. We still look at the 4-3-1-2 formation. Here, let's say that he could potentially play the role of a trequartista. In a more so narrow 4-3-1-2, Modric could play as the attacking midfielder behind the two strikers, like Jimenez and, let's say Vlahovic if Milan signs him. This particular formation would utilize his vision and his ability to pass the ball in the final third. The negative with this particular formation is that this one requires a lot of running, and at his age, I feel like of the three formations that I've talked about, the 4-3-1-2 is probably, especially playing as a trequartista in that, is probably the least likely that we would see Modric play. It could be that, in a game where Milan is sitting on a 0-0 scoreline against a slightly weaker side that is kind of overperforming, and you have hit about that 65-70 minute mark, then you might put Modric in there. For those 20 minutes, then he could play maybe in that advanced attacking role behind the two strikers. There Milan could then try and leverage his, as I said, his vision and his ability to pass in the final third, because you're not going to tax him physically too much. He just has the right amount of time, about 15 to 20 minutes to deliver. And with his experience and quality, he actually could deliver a goal for your team. Modric's ability to play those quick 1-2s and that ability to, thread the ball between, tight spaces could really be beneficial if you are playing two strikers up front, because you will have more attacking options to pass the ball out too. But as I said, this is a formation that requires a lot of, defensive work in transition. If you lose the ball and they start hitting on the counter, Modric is going to have to run pretty far back because he's already so far advanced down the field. And that's where this role is something maybe he's not given too much in this season. Some of the key partnerships in this particular formation, just to throw it out there, I'd say maybe a player like Ruben Loftus-Cheek. He is a box-to-box midfielder. He can, on a counter, commit back. So if Modric is more advanced, Loftus-Cheek could offer maybe a little bit more defensive coverage, allowing the Croatians to stay a little bit further up and help out an attack. The other key partnership in this for him would probably be the strikers. As I said, in those tight spaces, he has the ability to thread the ball through. So if he can do that and he has two strikers up front, Jimenez and a second striker that Milan is being linked with, they could get some of those, creative passes that Modric makes, and it would open up goal scoring opportunities for them. From a minutes standpoint, I would say that he's probably going to play the least amount of minutes in this particular formation. If he has to play in this formation, it'll probably be closer to the end of the game. If he starts off in this formation from the very beginning, he's probably going to be substituted out very quick. Some of the challenges that we have to, and then the tactical considerations that we have to make with this is that Serie A is a very physically demanding league, and arguably the highest demand from a physical standpoint is in the midfield. Those midfield battles in this league are intense, and his reduced stamina would mean that he almost certainly has to be substituted by players like Samuele Ricci or Fofana or Loftus-Cheek, or even by Arden Yashari if the player is actually signed on. That lighter schedule, playing one game a week, would definitely help, but you still have to manage his minutes without a doubt. The other challenge then becomes, the squad's balance. All of these profiles that we're looking at right now, Ricci, Modric, Musa, maybe less so Fofana, but still even Fofana, these are more like builders. They build things. You don't have a destroyer in your midfield. That Kessie type of profile that just bulldozes through, that Gattuso type of a man that just goes through the other side's midfield, You don't have that. The closest thing that Milan has to that is Yusuf Fofana. And I think that is something that the club is still going to have to address in terms, they may have to consider signing a more, destructive defensive midfielder, outright defensive midfielder, to be able to provide that protection, let's say, for example, in a double pivot that a player like Modric would need. The positive is, again, the leadership impact. This is a 6-time Champions League winner, guys. This guy has won, as I said, 28 different titles with Real Madrid. And he would also be able to teach the entire squad about the concept of discipline, about accomplishing your goals. There's no chance that you win 28 titles with Real Madrid, 6 Champions League trophies, a Ballon d'Or, make deep runs with your team in the World Cup, make it to the final in the World Cup, and you're not a disciplined, hardcore disciplined player. So I think it is fair to say that this signing is as impactful as it is from a leadership standpoint, and has a potential of being impactful from a footballing standpoint. And that emotional connection that he has with the club already, we've seen pictures of him. He's a lifelong fan of Zvonimir Boban. That's how he became a Milan fan. So he's not just coming here, as I said, to move into a retirement home. He is coming here because he wants to do something with his team. Even Iglitare talked about that. When I called him, the first thing he asked me was, can we actually win the league with this team? So he's not coming here for a vacation. From what I feel, he's coming here to leave an impact. How much of it he'll be able to do, we'll have to wait to see. How much of it he can get out of his teammates, I think will be very impactful. And for me, the arrival of Modric to Milan can potentially have as much of an impact as Ibrahimovic's return did 6 years ago. And there you have it, Milanisti. That's a little bit of a tactical, analytical, breakdown of Modric's arrival at Milan. If you guys like videos like this, let me know in the comment section, and we'll try to do one of these for every player that signs for Milan this summer transfer window. And as always from my side, Forza Milan. Grazie mille. Ciao tutti. This is style of play and the scandals. Oh, the scandals, including a bizarre locker room incident where a player essentially drugged his own teammates. And we'll look at how lowering Serie A from 20 teams to 18 teams might be the